Welcome to Jonathan Puslowski's Mock Draft 1.0 post-combine mock draft.
Sure.
First of many mock drafts to come. And let's get into it because there is a heavy debate for who should be drafted number one overall. It's Fernando Mendoza.
Okay, cool.
That is the pick there. I'll go ahead and tell you why, though. And I got why for every single position that is drafted in this draft.
Sure.
I've completed my team analysis, giving statistics, free agency reasons for every position that is a need for every single team in the league. Ask me if it's a need. I can tell you why they need it. And for the Raiders, they need a quarterback. Sadly, my guy, the GOAT, Geno Smith, did not have a good year last year. Geno led the league last year in interceptions with 17. And of the quarterbacks to start 15 or more games, he was dead last in touchdowns, and he only threw for more yards per game than Jalen Hurts, Bryce Young, and the rookie number one overall pick Cam Ward. Not good company you want to be with when it comes to throwing passing yards in an NFL game. Good company you want to be with when you're talking about collegiate success, which Geno did have a fair amount of that. And Fernando Mendoza may have had the best of it among those three guys, winning the national championship and not being benched at halftime, beating Miami, his former childhood team in his hometown. Mendoza, I think, goes number one. That's not really a debate. Everyone agrees there. It's kind of consensus. But the two...
I'm going to predict. I want to predict.
Well, I have
Okay,
a
go
tangential
ahead.
question to ask him first.
Sure.
Where's Geno Smith playing starting quarterback next season?
I think he's a Minnesota Viking
Okay.
after everything I heard this week.
Sure.
And I can't wait for that. I need to get a
That's
Geno
so
Smith
sad for the Vikings.
jersey if that occurs.
I mean,
And
they just
then
went
we'll
through a
have a
season
nice-
of 9 and Max Brosmer. I think they'll be okay.
We'll have a nice rivalry between me and Chromie.
Sure.
9 versus Geno. I can't wait for that.
That's going to be good stuff.
So I would say he is more than likely on another team because of the quarterbacks available that were talked about this week, of that being a possibility. Tua, Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins, Geno, Daniel Jones is kind of even being talked about in that a little bit. Look, I'm going to be point blank honest. I still think Geno's the best of those 5 quarterbacks. If I had to pick a second, I'd pick Kyler Murray. And I don't want to mean that as a slight on Daniel Jones. I just think Daniel Jones is kind of a lock to be a Colt. I don't even think he should be part of the conversation.
Sure.
So I do think Geno is somewhere else to get him, because he's good enough. And I think the Raiders can get some capital maybe back for him in some kind of trade. He doesn't, profile as a guy who's going to be a veteran and help Mendoza grow. I don't think Mendoza needs that. I think Mendoza just needs to play.
Cool. At number 2, I'm predicting David Bailey. Take it away.
Jackie, you have a prediction?
I'll go with Arvell Reese because I want to be different. I don't want to
Did you see JP's face on Thursday when David Bailey ran his 40?
I think
I was looking right at him.
I think the debate, of course, and everyone agrees, the debate starts at number 2. And for me, I feel like it's a really short debate. I think you're talking about 2 players, and then you pick which one of those players you like, and then you're talking about 2 other players. I think for the Jets, you need a playmaker who can fill many holes in a sinking ship right now. So the first debate for me is between Arvell Reese and David Bailey. Reese has played nearly every spot in the front 7. He's faster than David Bailey. I think the versatility ends the debate in need for the Jets because they have needs at almost all 7 spots in the front 7, you could argue. Even with the trade that they were able to get Tavondre Sweat from the Titans, I don't think they've shored up their defensive tackle.
Sure.
And Arvell Reese could even play over the center. Myles Garrett does that from time to time. So for me, I would pick Arvell Reese over David Bailey. Then I think the debate is between Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs. And I think that's a debate because of what the season the Jets had last year, where they had 0 interceptions, which is the first time any NFL team has ever had no picks in a single season. They allowed the most passing touchdowns in the NFL with 36, meaning that quarterbacks were 36 touchdowns, 0 interceptions when they played the New York Jets defense. This defense allowed the second most points per game at 29.6, and the worst stat of them all, 1.6% of Jets' opponent drives ended in a turnover this past season. That is the lowest in NFL history. The next closest lowest was 3.9%.
Jeez.
It is astronomically bad how bad they were at turning the ball over, how bad they were at stopping the pass. Linebacker and defensive line are both still needs, of course. And so the reason I would pick, personally, Arvo Reese at this point, you can go and lock him in. The Jets, they had 0 takeaways of any kind from a linebacker as well. You add on top of the defensive backs who had no interceptions, no takeaways, no forced fumbles from a linebacker last year. They allowed scores on 49.2% of drives. Think of Ohio State and Arvo Reese. And again, the debate's still there with Caleb Downs. That defense was the best defense in college football, one could argue, last year. They allowed the most fantasy points per game to running backs last season. I think Arvo Reese has the ability to shore that up. Now, his sack production wasn't good enough to, shore up sacking, but the dude's a freak. And I do think because they have so many needs this year, getting the guy who will be a guy who can play in a ton of positions is a better fit than David Bailey personally. Any debate there from you guys?
This is what I would do. I don't think this is what they're gonna do. Though we actually probably should keep in mind that while we were all being wowed by David Bailey's 40, Aaron Glenn was asleep, so he probably didn't see that happen.
True.
So he honestly may be no higher on David Bailey than he was going into the weekend. But yeah, I'm totally fine with this.
Yeah, I am as well. I mean, they're both very good players. I think they are probably edge rushers 1 and 2 off the board. So, 0 issue. David Bailey was just my guess, given how I saw your reaction to his 40 time.
I do also wonder if Arvo Reese being so versatile, while like a nice bonus, if the Jets are just like, hey, we just really want an edge rusher, if they go with like the more traditional sized edge rusher, traditional like prototype edge rusher, right? Just because they're like, we want to make sure we hit that pick. Like, yeah, we have a lot of needs, but like we're just going to go through them one by one. So like, let's get the edge rusher, not the athletic freak that can play edge rusher. Like, I don't know what the thought process is there. Once again, I would take Arvo Reese because I love the athletic freak. But sometimes you can screw up the athletic freaks.
It's such an interesting debate, and this is just one of the
Sure.
probably tens, if not dozens, of debates we will have between Reese and David Bailey, more than likely over the coming weeks. For number 3, I do feel like with the Arizona Cardinals, people have just go ahead and mocked it to say they need to pick an offensive player, and PFF agrees in that their needs are all offensive players. So maybe Jeremiah Love, and with the way he tested this past week, maybe Francis Maui-Noah, people are feeling. But personally, I don't know, because I feel like they really will struggle here because I don't think the value is there for an offensive lineman. I do think the value is there if you wanted to draft Jeremiah Love. So for me personally, I would try to do what the Arizona Cardinals did in 2023 when they had the number 3 overall pick and traded back with the Houston Texans, where they got 2 first-round picks out of that trade. They ended up taking their franchise left tackle and Paris Johnson later. The Texans came up and took Will Anderson Jr. Now, there's maybe an argument that the Cardinals lost that trade. I think it's a fair argument, but in a world, let's say you didn't trade that pick and you took Will Anderson Jr. that night, you'd sit here today in a worse spot. You'd have no clue who your quarterback is still, because Kyler would have done the same thing with Will Anderson, whether or not he was on the team. And you would need to now have a lucrative contract to pay and keep Will Anderson. He's going to need to get extended this offseason by the Houston Texans. Instead, they got a franchise left tackle out of it in Paris Johnson when they made this trade in 2023. And now I think they should do the same thing. The problem is, I don't know who's going to make that trade, because when you go down the list, who's going to come in front of the Titans to try and take, David Bailey or Jeremiah Love at this point? And I don't know who you can make the argument for where it makes sense trading 2 first-round picks to trade up and get this one guy. I think maybe if anyone, it is the Kansas City Chiefs, which I know Sanders, you did that last week, but you did the trade with the Tennessee
The
Titans.
yeah.
At 4. I think maybe there be some debate with Kansas City, but you think about their cap situation, they need these first-round picks to be able to stay under the cap and still add talent. They are going to get under the cap this offseason, but next season they'll be in the exact same spot. They're going to kick the can down the road, per se. And then you go a little deeper. 11, the Miami Dolphins, why would they trade 2 first-round picks? The Cowboys don't have the first-round pick next year. Actually, they do have 1 first-round pick next year, but why would you trade yet another first-round pick? We just saw it for Quinnen Williams. At 13, it doesn't make any sense for who's at 13? Who's at 13? Scroll. That's right, the Los Angeles Rams. Doesn't make sense for them to trade first-round picks either, especially trading up. They're going to get David Bailey. They don't need it. They already have Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. So, because I don't know who's going to trade, I'm not going to make that trade. But I do think the Cardinals should look to make some kind of trade and trade back and get the same kind of deal they got last year, because this is a roster with many holes. That being said, I'm not going offense. I'm not going Jeremiah Love. I'm not going Francis Mariota, because I think the need is actually defensively. They allowed the 4th most points per game at 28.7. They gave up more than 35 points 6 times, which is 1/3 of their game, more than 1/3 of the games they played this year. They gave up the 27th most yards per game. 48.9% of drives ended in a score for the opposing team. And they allowed the 2nd most fantasy points per game to running backs last season. So for me, I'm going to go with Caleb Downs. I think with the Jalen Thompson free agency leaving, if they don't re-sign Jalen Thompson, then they will have a need at free safety. And there you go with Caleb Downs, and he can help immediately with those 5 things that I listed statistically that they have a need at for defense. I don't think they have the need necessarily for pass rusher with Josh Sweat still on the roster. And you would hope Walter Nolan, plays more next year. He was a pass rushing defensive tackle they drafted last year. And so I'm going with Caleb Downs. I think it's a shocking one.
It is.
When I post a TikTok, at least on our TikTok page, of this pick, it's going to get hate. I don't care. I think Caleb Downs is good enough to warrant this kind of pick. And I think the Cardinals need defense. I think they can get an offensive lineman maybe potentially later in this draft, but I also think they should just trade the pick, get it, and then have a first-round pick next year on top of their other first-round pick. So that goes to 4.
Well, I was going to say,
you have a question?
I don't like that.
Why?
For the same reasons I took an offensive player on my mock draft last week, was they are already very heavily invested in defense.
But the defense wasn't good.
Right, because they had 5 rookies that they drafted, and they drafted their first 5 picks last year were all defenders, so they're rookies, so they're young.
And Jonathan Gannon leaves. Were his rookies.
Yeah.
Now with this new head coach and Mike LaFleur, what's the odds he likes these rookies? I don't know.
That's fair, but also wasn't he was the offensive coordinator at the Rams, if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken. Everything about that. They also spent 2 of their first 3 in 2024 on defense, 2 of their first 3 in 2023 on defense. They've already invested so much draft stock in defense. It's very hard for me to believe that and this now is this what you would do or what you think will happen?
This is what I would
Okay,
do.
so
if I couldn't find a trade suitor, this is what I would do.
I'll stop my what LaFleur would do argument because it's moot because this is what you would do. But I just don't see it happening. But it being what you would do, yeah, I'm okay with that. Cool. You can go and move on to number 4.
At number 4, I thought, in this combine this past weekend, this is the post-combine mock draft, I thought 3 defensive players that tested really well and then popped off the screen were Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, and then David Bailey. And so if I'm the Tennessee Titans, I would run to the podium if David Bailey is sitting here at 4. Now, more than likely, all 3 of those guys would be available at 4, and so any of those 3 guys I'm potentially running to the podium for, even Sonny Styles here at 4. I think there's maybe some debate between Sonny Styles and Jeremiah Love. I've talked to multiple Titans fans this week, actually. I know a few in my classes, and I've seen a few opinions online. Jeremiah Love is becoming the hot get here, but I do think that this team is trying to sell Jeremiah Love a little bit too high. They're trying to create some smoke. Because this is the same team that at the beginning of Combine Week, before they traded Devondre Sweat, said that they loved his fit with Robert Saleh, and they thought he was going to have some big things this coming year. And then they traded him the next day. I don't think this franchise is going to publicly say what they truly believe. And so I think they're going to try and blast Jeremiah Love's stock as much as they can. Say, oh, we're taking Jeremiah Love. We're taking Jeremiah Love. And try to force a team like the Commanders, New Orleans, Kansas City to trade up and take Jeremiah. And so I think it's just a bunch of smoke for Tennessee. And so I think they go with David Bailey at 4 if they can't find that trade. Why do they need an edge rusher? Jeffrey Simmons led the team in sacks last year with 11. But the next closest who will be on the team next year had just 4 sacks. Robert Saleh dealt with a defense in the 49ers last year that had the least sacks in the NFL, 20. 20 sacks in the regular season through the 17 games. So I think go ahead and add a franchise edge rusher to pair along with Jeffrey Simmons is completely the move here for Tennessee. And that moves us on to number 5. Do you have any thoughts on 4, though?
Just really quick, I
Sure.
am interested, where Ruben Bain factors in, because the arms came in really short, but we already knew the arms were going to be short, and so is which team is not going to care about it? I guess I don't think it's the Titans at 4, but I do think it's a possibility that he does go at 4 because maybe they just love everything else about him, the power he plays with, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd take David Bailey.
My question would be, if that were to happen, which I find unlikely, that would be the highest the team has traded up. So, we talk about, the highest running back drafted since Saquon at 2. That would be the highest a running back has been traded up for since X. I don't know the answer to that. I'm, looking back very quickly. I'm not going to find it right now. But that would be, I believe, unprecedented for a team to trade up to 4 for running back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my thought there is whoa.
And the Titans very well could take Jeremiah. I personally wouldn't. I think he have enough in Tony Pollard, and I do think with Robert Saleh being a defensive head coach, he's the guy who's going to be there for a long time, you hope. Not a guy like Brian Dable. Brian Dable is auditioning for the next year or the next 2 years for his next head coaching job. And so get your defense, get your pillar players there, and I think you can address playmakers at a later date. I also think wide receiver is a way bigger need for Tennessee than it is running back. So I do think they go with David Bailey, and that leads us to 5. And at number 5, I have the New York Giants selecting Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle from Miami. Why? Greg Van Roten, their right guard, is going to be a free agent. Also, Jermaine Illuminor, their starting right tackle, is going to be a free agent. Andrew Thomas, their franchise left tackle, missed 4 games in 2025, 11 games in 2024, and 7 games in 2023. So 4+ games, averaging at 7.7 1/3 games per season. This guy is missing. That's your franchise left tackle. Mauigoa has the ability to potentially move over to left tackle, although you'd love him specifically at right tackle. This offense, even with Cam Scatterbo, was a middle-of-the-pack rushing team in terms of yards per carry, just 4.3. They were the 16th in the league, like I said, middle of the pack. And their longest rush of the season was 31 yards. Diabolically short. They need to have better run production. Now, there's also a debate, again, for Jeremiah Love here. But I would... My hesitancy there is I don't see that with John Harbaugh. I don't see him taking a running back that high, considering all of the debates we had with Derrick Henry and his usage for multiple years in Baltimore. What is he just going to suddenly change and now he wants Jeremiah Love? Well, maybe he loves Jeremiah Love and he, no pun intended, it won't end up using him. I hate the pick there.
He loves love. Wow.
I won't be the first time that'll be said, and that's also not the first time it's been said in general. Any thoughts there?
I love it. I'm good with it. I'm great with it. I think they have multiple different ways they could go with that pick to, and I would love it. Like they're in a good spot there.
I think with how deep the wide receiver group is, that you just put Jeremiah Love at 6 to the Browns.
Oh, who did you say? I'm sorry.
We
I
were
heard you
talking
say.
about Maunoga at 5 and why they could go
Reset.
Love.
I apologize.
You good.
I apologize. I will start the.
Well, Sanders resets.
You can undo
I do
pick.
think there's
you can
a
undo pick up top.
oh,
Oh,
wow!
sweet.
What an upgrade! Shout out PFF. That is new.
that's actually massive.
Roger
I
Goodell
love-
runs back up to the podium. We got it wrong.
Psych!
It'd be like
They're all
like
celebrating.
Steve Harvey at
Yeah.
I do
Miss
apologize.
America.
I heard you talking about run game, and I was responding to a text.
No, you're good.
And
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to like make a deal like, who did you say? Because then I looked like I wasn't paying attention.
What would the reaction be if all the Giants fans in attendance thought they got Jeremiah Love just for them to take an offensive tackle that most of them probably haven't heard of because
But you did say Mauno to the Giants, right?
correct.
yes.
Okay.
Like what would be the 180 there? Elation to booze, or do you think they descend to booze, or just like it'd
I
be
think it would
true
be
confusion?
booze.
Yeah.
You think they'd rather have you'd rather have Love over an offensive tackle? The Giants?
I just feel like the fans that go to the draft are not always the most locked into college ball, and they're way more likely to know running back one's name than the
Yeah,
offensive
but they also
tackle.
already have Scatteroo.
Yeah, I don't have running back listed as a need whatsoever. I do think the idea of Scatabo and Jeremiah Love together is appealing. It also would potentially increase the longevity of Cam Scatabo's career.
True.
But if
there
you're
may
going to
be
go,
no increasing that.
yeah, if you're going to go playmaker, it would make more sense to go wide receiver. But I do think with how deep the wide receiver class is, you can find those guys at the top of the second round as opposed to right here at 5.
Yeah.
I think you'll get more value out of taking a franchise offensive lineman. I do think that is a huge need for them, if not their biggest need, outside of wide receiver and corner. That moves us. Go ahead.
Agree or disagree? The top of the wide receiver class took a hit at the combine.
Yeah.
Not saying like they like cratered down the board.
The first one, I would say the first round wide receivers. Is that when you say top? Because I
Well,
know,
I feel like it's.
I know Denzel Boston took a big hit.
Well, he just didn't run, which is a bad look for him.
Yes,
Yeah.
drop.
Yes,
Yes,
he didn't have a drop.
right, exactly. So when your thing
Which
is
means he's terrible.
you're not when your thing is you don't have speed or separation. Your thing is contested catches and sure hands, and you have a drop. It does not look good. So he definitely didn't boost his stock.
I'm more meant like the top kind of
So I actually
3, roughly, of like Mekhi Lemon because of his weird interview.
I think they took a drop, but I don't think it was because of them. I thought it was because in the I don't want to put someone else's candle out to make mine burn brighter. There's just those other people started burning brighter.
yeah,
The
that's
other
fair.
people around them.
I
moved.
think that's a fair point. I just think we maybe kind of.
I do think that outside of
the
the interview, Lemon tested well though. Didn't he run the gauntlet like super well?
you
or am
know,
I
he ran
thinking
the
of
gauntlet really well.
what is it?
KC Conception,
Oh yes,
just smooth.
and I might be
staying on
thinking of
that
the
line.
other USC receiver, but
Jacoby Lane ran it
I
really
think-
well.
I think
Jacoby
Lane
Lane
is what I'm
ran it
thinking
really
about.
well.
I'm not saying like they're bad. I just think in the look of like one of them, who's going to be wide receiver 1, who's going to be wide receiver 1, we're looking at some of them as like, oh man, maybe even like generational, and it's like, oh wait, it's like none of them are like probably a true like S tier wide receiver.
one of them is
prospect.
probably the best of them is probably wide receiver 4 in each of the last 2 or 3 drafts, maybe more.
I don't even want to think
I'd have
about
to,
that
yeah,
right now.
It's too much in the weeds. Sorry,
Okay,
I got
that's
us
fair,
way
that's fair.
sidetracked.
Let's
I
get
was-
back to the draft.
Speaking of wide receiver, it's completely on topic, actually. I think the
Perfect.
Cleveland Browns should take Carnell Tate at 6 if this is how the draft had fallen at this point. Why? Because their leading wide receiver last year, Jerry Jeudy, had just 602 yards. Jeudy was also second in the league in drops with 10, and he had the second worst passer rating when targeted of wide receivers with 35 or more targets, a whopping 43.8 passer rating. Now, that's just a stat, so maybe there's some debate there that was the quarterbacks in Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and Joe Flacco throwing to him, or it may just be that their starting wide receiver 1 is not that great in Jerry Jeudy. They also had just 4 receiving touchdowns from receivers last year. Carnell Tate, with the success that Ohio State receivers have had outside of Marvin Harrison, who still has a chance, why, for a franchise that just seems to kind of get in their own way all the time and draft bust and whatnot, except for Myles Garrett, Gig'em, I think they kind of make a known commodity. You would hope it would be very Browns-esque for this receiver to flop out of Ohio State, but I would think this would be just, let's just take a, we think we should, this should be.
Sure.
We've never seen an Ohio State receiver fail. Now that's
Yeah.
an absolute.
It's
There have
basically
been some, but
it's basically what I said about the Jets last week, where it's you've tried to do this whole tried to outthink everyone multiple times and do this good process, all this stuff. You just need to draft a really good player, and so for the Browns, it's like, why don't you just draft the guy who was really good at college and productive and has all the physical traits to do that at the NFL as well. It's not
Sure.
like it's a guy who it's like he was productive at college, but he's Cassius Howell in his arms and his speed. Like, not to be a dig at Cassius Howell, but like that's
Cassius
what
Howell just
Right.
broke records in a bad way. So
exactly.
no dig.
Very productive, but like, oh, the physicals. But then you also have the guys that's like, man, he had zero production, but the physicals are there. Tate's got both. Just draft the guy who has both. There you go, Browns. I just fixed your franchise.
I hope he
Continue.
falls to 26,
luck.
like Brandon Beane hopes for the Buffalo Bills. That was one of the funniest moments of the weekend. As Carnell Tate ran the 40, Brandon Beane, the GM for the Buffalo Bills, is sitting there with Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah and said, "Man, he ran that kind of slow." I'm paraphrasing. He ran that kind of slow. He should fall in the draft. Speaking
That's
of
pretty
Carnell
good.
Tate, trying
Yeah.
to get him to fall to 26. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he
No,
goes
I don't
to
think so either.
6.
Is
at the
there any
Cleveland
number
Browns.
of off-field issues that could cause him to fall to 28?
He commits murder tomorrow, yes.
Is he a second-round pick at that point?
Nah.
No.
Third? You're drafting his
No.
rights.
No, he's a first-round pick.
He's a first-round pick.
He's not falling past the Bills. I don't think.
Okay, cool.
I think it's
They'll
worth it.
draft him and they'll find him the best lawyers possible.
If he commits murder in GTA, I do think
yes, and yeah.
Cool.
he's still a first-round pick.
Yep.
That leads us to Jack's Washington Commanders at 7. And look, I'll go ahead and tell you right now, when we get to draft night and we're doing our draft special, if they take an offensive player, I think I will lose my mind. Because when I did the team profiles for every single team, and I don't just mean Jeremiah Love, it could be any of the receivers, it could be even be Carnell Tate. I don't think I've had any more of the teams. I look how big that is. It almost takes up the entire page of these
Is
are
that all of their needs?
from the top to the bottom. That takes
It's
up
like, why take this
that's
position? Why
all-
take this position?
defensive stats, and every single one of them is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Allowed the most yards per game last year, 384. They had the worst hurry percentage in the NFL, 5.3%. Their leading sacker was Von Miller, who is 37 and a free agent. Bobby Wagner, their leading tackler, is a free agent and 36. They had the second most missed tackles in the NFL, 131. They allowed the worst. They tied third worst yards per play allowed, so the most, 6. They allowed the fourth most fantasy points per game to running backs last season. We haven't even got to defensive backs. Defensive backs, the fourth most yards after catch given up. 60 missed tackles by defensive backs. They allowed the worst yards per completion, the fifth most passing yards. Just 6 interceptions from DBs. That's tied second worst in the NFL. Only ahead of the New York Jets. They had 6 more than them. They also allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers last season. So,
Wow.
I mean, I talked about it a lot, and yeah, this team was hellacious to watch. I literally
And yet y'all beat me. Y'all
True.
beat us, the
True.
Chargers.
well, preseason vibes were a little higher. You know, sometimes vibes can carry you for a couple weeks. I literally watched us play the Vikings late in the season, and J.J. McCarthy leads like a 14-minute drive on our heads.
yes.
Easily the best drive of his career. Like, that's how bad it was. So, yes, we go defense, go defense, go defense.
Well, Jack and I are in agreement, and we just talked about this guy earlier. And at this pick, Sonny Styles, I think, is the pick for me. Styles was a combine riser and then some. With this mock now, this is going to be a story that I do think will become true. We're going to see 4 Ohio State players picked in the top 7, which would be the most players from a single school to be picked in the first 7 picks ever. The next closest was the top 10, which I think we saw from Michigan State was the stat in like 1963 or something.
I mean, that was a
something
really good Michigan
ridiculous.
State team. They were quite good.
Rich Eisen was talking about the number 1 overall pick running back a ton on his show earlier today. Sonny Styles, we talked about it earlier, or just a second ago, second most missed tackles in the NFL, 131. Sonny Styles had just 2 missed tackles in his final year at Ohio State. He had 89 combined tackles last year. I think he's a perfect fit for them. I think he immediately can solve some defensive needs for this team. And so for me, I'm going with Sonny Styles.
I mean, I'd love it. I'd be elated. Huge fan. Technical difficulties happening. But I would give us... I feel like we get a top 3 player in this draft. From a physical standpoint, obviously, positional value matters, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But I'd love it. All for it. We'll pause for a second. Did you pull up the live stream? Is it glitchy on the live stream too? Interesting.
It's now connected without being plugged in.
Yeah, see, that makes no sense. But it actually is, because, I'm waving.
Well, does it connect via
What?
Bluetooth?
I think it does, but it's definitely not supposed to.
I mean, that's that's definitely why the connection. Maybe it has just connected via Bluetooth, and that's why.
Why is it slow? Don't slow
goofy.
down with me, with me just walking, please. It was working better when it was not plugged in. I've never used it wirelessly before. I always plug it in because that's the most reliable connection, and now it worked better when it wasn't
Do
plugged
we
in.
want me to plug my phone in?
I'm just gonna go unplug my phone and just run with it. I'm at like 80%. We've only got probably 45 minutes left on the show. 30 minutes.
Yeah.
45. Yeah.
Let's run with it.
We'll
See
do
what
it.
happens.
And if it keeps glitching, then we can try my phone. That is weird, though. Definitely something to get figured out before the draft show.
Yeah.
100%. Well, let's let it catch up real quick. Loading.
It's in fast forward mode. Look at it zoom.
It's trying to catch up.
It's close. I think it's there.
No.
Yep. We're back. All right, great.
I'm just seeing if it's we're smooth, and it seems like we're pretty smooth with it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're great.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, we're
sorry,
chilling.
sorry.
Looks good to
JP.
me.
No
Looks great.
motion
Find
blur.
your role again.
No motion blur.
Sonny
Man.
Styles is the pick for the Commanders.
Sure.
Jack is in no disagreement there. Like you said, it's a top 3 from a physical trait perspective in this draft, and they have a huge need, I think, at linebacker with Bobby Wagner. Sonny Styles can immediately be the green dot for them, be a huge tackler, be a leader of this defense, and maybe save Dan Quinn's job this coming season as he potentially is on the hot seat. We ride to the Bayou with the New Orleans Saints and my New Orleans Saints. And again, like I said earlier with the Tennessee Titans, run to the podium. The Saints have needed another playmaker alongside Chris Olave since his second season in the league, and we have never found it. Kellen Moore can go get his Saquon Barkley and then some with Love's receiving upside, a guy who scouts believe this guy could be a wide receiver 1 in the league as a potential upside. Why running back? Well, the Saints last year had the 5th least rushing yards. They were tied second for the least rushing touchdowns with 9. Second worst yards
Shout
per
out 9.
attempt, 3.7. Alvin Kamara, their lead running back, is 31. And their longest rush of the season was 34 yards by Tyler Shuck.
Shout out Tyler Shuck.
Unideal. They also had, and they were the only team in the NFL to have 0 games with a 100-yard rusher last year. So get the guy who will have 12 of them next year for the New Orleans Saints, Jeremiah Love. please draft Jeremiah Love.
All Chiefs fans everywhere just like fell to their knees.
And I could not be happier.
Sure.
That is kind of ideal that y'all get to rob the Chiefs of this right before.
That's the problem, though. I think I mentioned it already on the show that there's an enormous amount of pressure on that pick because if we don't draft Jeremiah Love,
Does Roger Goodell rig it?
that could be a
He
potential
just says a
argument.
different name.
Yeah.
Like y'all pick Love and he just gets up there and says,
Makai Lemon.
yeah, y'all picked Makai Lemon. Because y'all can't prove it, right?
Well, yeah, I think you can prove it with
I
the
don't know.
card that we turned in. But
He can
Because
switch
also
the cards out.
There's video.
That's a good
there's-
mystery, a crime movie right there. I'm on that.
okay.
Let me go
bet,
to AI.
Yeah.
I'm making a 2-hour full-length movie with AI.
there you go.
Yeah, there'd be like video footage of them in the
For sure,
'cause,
for
you know,
sure.
they do the thing like
We don't have to do a deep dive into this.
we got our guy, and it's a video of them selecting Jeremiah Love and making the call.
Yep.
I love Love, man. Can't wait to have you here.
All right.
Continue.
I do
Jeremiah
love
Love.